Oh yeah, come and sit down. No distractions today, because this story, this is the kind that can make you laugh and still shout, God forbid. This story is about Mira and Miala, identical in face, identical in smile, identical in the way they laughed until their sides hurt. As children, they would race down dusty streets, kicking up red earth behind them, daring each other to be the last one home before their mother locked the door.
If mommy locks the door, don't knock.
Don't knock, Miala would shout, already several steps ahead. And Mira, breathless and grinning, would shout back, Wait for me! They always waited for each other. That was simply how it was. Mira was the quiet one, thoughtful, careful, slow to anger, the kind of person who would swallow a sharp word rather than let it cut someone else. Miala was the opposite, bold, fearless, the kind of woman who walked into a room and immediately rearranged it without asking permission. Where Mira avoided conflict, Miala chased it, not out of cruelty, but out of a deep, restless need to feel alive. Still, they loved each other fiercely. That much was never in question.
We will always be like this, right? Always. Promise? I promise. We will be sisters and best friends forever. Yes, forever.
Years later, Mira met Daniel the way most important things happen, by accident. She was sitting in a bookstore cafe one afternoon, her laptop open, her coffee growing cold beside her, when a man collided with her table and sent that coffee spilling across the surface. He panicked immediately, grabbing napkins, apologizing in rapid succession, nearly knocking over the sugar dispenser in his haste to fix the damage. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's fine, she said, though her jaw had tightened. My laptop is okay. He let out a breath so long and dramatic that she almost laughed. Thank God, he said. I would have been in serious trouble. She looked at him. He had an honest face, the kind that didn't know how to hide very much. But you can afford this coffee? She asked, raising an eyebrow. He laughed, surprised. Okay, fair point. Let me buy you another one. She studied him for a moment. There was something disarming about him. He wasn't trying too hard, which made her trust him just a little. It better be better than this one, she said. Deal. He sat down and they started talking. One conversation folded into another and time moved the way it does when you're not watching it. They discovered they shared a passionate, almost personal hatred of Lagos traffic. They laughed at the same things, went quiet at the same things, and somewhere in the middle of that ordinary afternoon, something began. Daniel became part of Mira's life slowly, then completely. 2 years after that spilled coffee, she stood at an altar in a small, sunlit venue and married him, her twin sister adjusting her veil with gentle hands, whispering that she looked beautiful. You deserve this happiness, Miala told her, holding the hug a second longer than necessary. Mira didn't notice the unreadable expression that flickered across her sister's face. For 2 years, life was peaceful. They painted walls the wrong colors and argued about it playfully. They cooked together and made a mess of the kitchen and laughed about that too. It was a quiet, comfortable kind of happiness. Then, on a rainy night, Mira's phone rang. It was Miala. Her voice was tired in a way that went beyond exhaustion. I lost my job, she said. When? Last month? Mira closed her eyes. Last month? Why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to worry you. There was a silence, and Mira already knew what came next. She asked about rent, and Miala went quiet. Come and stay with me, Mira said. Are you sure? You are my sister, of course I'm sure. She told Daniel that evening, and he agreed without hesitation. She was family, he said. Of course she could stay. 2 days later, Miala arrived at the door with a suitcase and a tight hug. You saved me, she said. You would do the same, Mira told her. She meant it. She truly meant it. Everyone in Mira's shoes will do the same. Besides, her sister is her family. But before we continue, please subscribe to our channel. Every subscribe means the world to me. Thank you for supporting my dream. Thank you from the depth of my heart. At first, it was nice having Miala around. The house felt fuller. There was more laughter in the kitchen, more noise in the evenings, more life in the rooms. Miala was good company, quick with the joke, easy to be around, always moving, always doing something. But things began to shift. She noticed that Miala had started dressing up without reason, standing in front of mirrors in outfits that seemed excessive for a day at home. She noticed that Daniel lingered in rooms where Miala was, that his eyes would follow her in a way that didn't belong to a brother-in-law. She noticed the morning she came downstairs, still half asleep, and Daniel mentioned he wasn't hungry because Miala had already made breakfast. "Don't worry, sis, I've got you," Miala said brightly. Daniel kissed Miara and left for work, and Miala watched him go, and beneath her breath, so softly that Miara almost didn't hear it, said, "Wait till I have him all to myself." Miara told herself she had misheard. She hadn't. There were other moments, conversations that stopped abruptly when she walked into a room, glances exchanged too quickly, inside jokes that had no explanation, a creeping wrongness that settled into the walls of her own home. Then came the night she couldn't sleep. She stepped out of the bedroom to look for Daniel and followed the sound of soft laughter to the living room. She stopped in the dark hallway before they saw her. Miala was leaning toward him, voice low, the kind of low that's only necessary when you don't want someone to hear. "Relax, we can't get caught." Daniel chuckled. "Miara trusts us too much." Miara stood there in the dark, frozen, silent, completely still, while everything she thought she knew rearranged itself around her. She backed away slowly. She returned to the bedroom. When Daniel came in minutes later, she pretended she had simply woken from a restless sleep. "I was just watching TV," he said. "With Miala?" "Yeah, she couldn't sleep either." She said. And that was all. She didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, she watched. She paid attention to the way Daniel's eyes moved when Miala laughed, the way Miala angled herself toward him without seeming to. The small adjustments they made when Mira was in the room, the way laughter would flatten slightly, the way they'd rearrange themselves on the sofa, the way conversations became careful. She paid attention to all of it, and she said nothing, and she felt the evidence accumulating inside her chest like stones. She called her friend Amaka from outside the house one afternoon, standing in the sun, voice low. "I think something is wrong," she said. "What do you mean?" "Daniel and Miala, they're acting strange." "Strange how?" "I saw them last night, together, the way they were talking." "I don't know yet." "Then find out," Amaka said. Mira decided to test them. She mentioned casually over dinner one evening that she might need to travel for work the following weekend. Just 2 days, nothing major. Daniel looked up immediately. Miala's eyes flicked briefly to Daniel before returning to Mira with a careful smile. "That's nice," Miala said. "You've been stressed. You should go." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, you should go." And in that moment, watching the two of them trying so hard to look ordinary, Mira understood. The final confirmation came that night. Daniel was in the shower when his phone lit up on the bed. Mira stared at it for a long moment before reaching for it, her hands unsteady. The messages were from Miala. "Are you coming tonight?" "She's already suspicious." Mira set the phone down before the bathroom door opened. She sat upright. She kept her face smooth. Daniel came out, noticed her near his phone, picked it up with a slightly too casual hand. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Nothing," she said. Later, Alone, Mira sat in front of the mirror and allowed herself exactly one moment of grief. She let the tears come and then she wiped them away with the back of her hand. If they think I'm stupid, she told her reflection, they are wrong. She picked up her phone and called Amaka. I want to catch them, she said. Are you ready for what you might see? Mira's eyes had gone still and certain. I already have. The night before she was meant to leave, she placed a small recording device in the living room and another in the bedroom, both hidden, both positioned well. She packed a bag. The next morning, Daniel and Miala walked her to the door. Daniel told her to call when she arrived. Miala hugged her and said to take care of herself. Mira held the hug a second longer than necessary, the way you hold something when you already know you're letting it go. Then she smiled, stepped into the waiting taxi and drove away. She spent the day at Amaka's house, restless and wired, phone in her hand. Amaka offered her food, offered her conversation, offered her the chance to turn back. Mira shook her head each time. I need to know, she said simply. Back at the house, Daniel came home to silence and stillness, and then Miala stepped out of her room. They looked at each other across the living room. A slow smile formed on Miala's face. She's gone, she said softly. What followed was captured clearly on the feed Mira watched from Amaka's sofa. She saw them sit together, closer than they'd ever dared when she was home. She saw Miala lean into him. She saw Daniel's hand cover hers. She heard Miala whisper, she'll never know. She saw Daniel hesitate. She gave him that much. She watched him hesitate. And then she watched them lean in and she watched them kiss. The phone dropped from her hand. She sat on Amaka's sofa, utterly still, tears falling in silence. Amaka said her name softly. Mira didn't respond. After a long time, she reached down and picked up the phone. Her expression had changed. The shock was gone. The confusion was gone. What was left was quieter and far colder. Amaka, she said, yes, we're going back. Now, I want to see their faces when they realize I know everything. The drive home was silent. Amaka sat beside her, watching her carefully, offering once more to wait until morning. Mira stared through the windscreen and said nothing until they pulled up a short distance from the house. Are you ready? Amaka asked. Mira looked at the lit windows of her own home. I was ready the moment they kissed. She opened the door and stepped out. Inside, Daniel and Miala were relaxed now, the danger of the evening apparently over. Miala was laughing softly, telling Daniel he worried too much. Daniel was smirking slightly, saying he wasn't scared of anyone. The front door opened. The laughter stopped. Mira stood in the entrance, Amaka just behind her. She looked at them both, calm, completely calm, and said, continue. Daniel was on his feet immediately, her name already on his lips. She told him to sit down quietly, and something in her voice made him obey. Miala stayed seated but drew herself upright, arms crossing slowly. The denial came first. It's not what it looks like. She let him finish. Then she stepped forward, unhurried, and said, because from where I was sitting, it looked very clear. Then she brought out her phone and pressed play. The voices filled the room. Mira trusts us too much. She'll never know. And she watched their faces as the words came back to haunt them. No more denial. How long? She asked. No one answered. How long? A few weeks, Daniel said finally, not meeting his eyes. She turned to Miala. It just happened, Miala said, lifting her chin. Something close to a laugh came out of Mira, hollow, painful. It just happened. You begged me to let you stay here. You were struggling. I opened my home to you. Miala stood up then, her voice rising to match the emotion she could no longer contain. She said Mira had always had everything, the stable life, the good husband, the comfortable home, and did Mira have any idea what it was like to struggle? So your solution, Mira said, was to take mine? She turned to Daniel. Was I not enough? He tried to answer. She asked him again, louder. He had nothing. There was nothing to say. She stepped back. Miala, she said, pack your things. You can't just throw me out. Get out. The word landed in the room like a door slamming. Then she looked at Daniel. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. He started to plead. She told him not to. She was finished. She stepped back, and the distance between them became permanent. Miala grabbed her bag with shaking hands. On her way out, she turned and said, You will regret this. Mira looked at her, calm, fearless, entirely certain. No, she said quietly, you will. Miala paused for just a second. Then she walked out. Daniel followed. The door shut. Mira stood alone in the silence of her own house. For a moment she held herself very still, and then her knees gave way beneath her, and she sank to the floor. And Amaka was beside her, and she cried, deeply, fully, without holding back, all the grief she had refused to show them. 2 weeks later, Mira sat across from a lawyer in a quiet office and signed her name without hesitation. No reconciliation, the lawyer asked. No second thoughts, she said. He made his choice. Now I'm making mine. Meanwhile, Daniel and Miala had found themselves in a small apartment that felt nothing like anything either of them had imagined. Miala complained that the apartment was too small. Daniel said it was temporary. They both knew, neither of them believed it. The public had opinions. In the market, Miala's name traveled ahead of her. That's the one who took her sister's husband, her own twin, and she would walk faster, jaw tight, eyes forward. The whispers followed her like weather. At home, the relationship that had once felt exciting now felt sharp-edged and exhausting. Miala wanted to know who Daniel was texting. Daniel said it was nothing. She grabbed the phone. He shouted. She shouted back. The electricity between them that had once felt like passion now felt only like friction. Then the call came, a contract cancelled, an error he hadn't made, a deal that had collapsed. Daniel lowered the phone slowly, the color gone from his face. He let out a sound, part shout, part wail, that bounced off the thin walls of the apartment. Financial trouble had found him. Miala demanded to know what the plan was. Daniel said he needed time. She told him time wouldn't pay rent. Across the city, Mira was being called into her boss's office. The board had reviewed her performance. They were promoting her. She stood in that office and felt something shift inside her. Not just gratitude, but the quiet confirmation that she was going to be okay. The thing about a love built on secrecy is that once the secret is gone, you have to ask, what's left? Daniel and Miala were beginning to find out. He lay awake at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling while she pretended to sleep beside him. He moved through his days like a man carrying something he couldn't put down. She watched him with suspicious eyes and accused him of being distant, then of being distracted, then with a specific and searing irony of seeing someone else. He laughed when she asked that. You are asking me about loyalty? He said quietly. She looked away. After everything we did? Meanwhile, at her office, Adrian arrived. He introduced himself calmly, shook her hand, told her he'd heard good things about her. Later, over coffee in the break room, he asked her what made her happy outside of work. She thought about it for a genuine moment. Peace, she said. That's rare these days, he replied. She smiled, and the afternoon felt lighter than it had in a very long time. Back at the apartment, things were falling further apart. Daniel came home late one evening and was met immediately by Miala's anger. He snapped at her, she snapped back. In the middle of the argument, he said something that wasn't meant as a confession, but was. "This is who I've always been." They both went quiet after that. He looked at her and said it plainly. What they had wasn't love. It was excitement, it was secrecy, and what remained was just two people who had hurt someone badly and now had to live with each other as proof of it. Miala's face broke for a moment. She told him not to act like it was shared guilt. He had come to her too, she reminded him. He didn't deny it, he didn't defend it. He just looked at her with tired, honest eyes. Then his phone rang again. He answered it, and the voice on the other end told him that HR had a letter waiting for him. He had lost his job. He put the phone down slowly. Miala said his name. He didn't respond. She said it again, panicking. When he finally spoke, his voice was completely empty. "I lost my job." The silence that followed was heavier than anything that had come before it. That same evening, as Miala walked out of the office building, Adrian fell into step beside her and asked gently if she'd like to get dinner sometime. She paused. For just a moment, she stood there perfectly still, deciding. Then she breathed in slowly and smiled. "I'd like that," she said. And for the first time in a very long time, she was choosing herself. Miala stood by the window with her arms crossed, while Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, blank-eyed and still. "So what's the plan?" she asked. He said he needed time. She told him time wouldn't pay rent. Then he said something that stopped her completely. He said he was going to talk to Mira. He said it plainly, without thinking about how it would land, which perhaps was why it landed the way it did. Miala turned to face him slowly. "The same woman you humiliated?" He avoided her eyes. "She's not heartless." "Or," Miala said, her voice very quiet, "you just want her back." He said nothing. His silence was the answer. Miala exploded. She told him to say it. He looked at her for a long moment, and then he said it. "Yes." Quietly. Miala told him he had made a choice, not a mistake, a choice, and now he wanted to walk back to Mira as though nothing had happened. She told him not to even think about leaving her. He said nothing, because he was already thinking about it. Across town, Mira sat in a softly lit restaurant across from Adrian. He told her she looked beautiful. He told her he wasn't there to rush her. When she asked how he knew what she'd been through, he said simply that people talked at the office, but that all he wanted was to know her, at her pace, in her time. She looked at him and felt something she had almost forgotten was possible: safety. The doorbell rang late that night. Mira opened her front door and found Daniel standing there. He looked smaller than she remembered, unpolished, humbled by something she could see had cost him considerably. She stepped outside and closed the door behind her. "Say what you have to say," she told him. He said he had messed up. He said he had lost everything because he hadn't valued what he had. He said he was sorry. Mira waited until he was finished. Then she began asking questions, not to wound him, but because they were the questions that deserved to be spoken aloud. Was he sorry when he lied to her? When he laughed behind her back? When he chose her sister? Each question cost her something to ask. He had no answer to any of them. When he said he wanted to fix things, that he wanted them back, she looked at him for a long, steady moment. Then she said no. She said it calmly, without drama, without cruelty. She said he hadn't just broken her heart, he had broken her trust. And trust, she told him, wasn't something that came back. He asked her to think about it. She told him she already had. She said goodbye, turned, and walked back inside. The door closed. This time, finally, for good. That same night, Miala sat alone in the dim apartment, phone in hand, scrolling through old photographs. Her and Mira as children, racing down dusty streets and laughing. "What have I done?" she whispered. It was, for the first time, the right question. The apartment Miala had shared with Daniel was nearly empty now. She sat on the floor with her back against the wall, eyes swollen, phone in her hand showing another rejection from another job application. The landlord knocked and told her she needed to clear out that day. She nodded. There was no argument left in her. Across the city, Daniel walked alone through streets that felt unfamiliar. He passed a couple laughing together and looked away. He stood on a corner and stared at Miala's contact in his phone. Then, he deleted it. Mira was stepping out of her house one evening when she saw a figure by the gate. Miala. Diminished. Different. They stood looking at each other from a distance. Then Miala walked slowly forward, and she said she hadn't come to fight. She said she had come to say she was sorry, not just for what she had done, but for who she had become. "I lost everything, Mira," she said, her voice unsteady, "and I deserve it." Mira was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but entirely certain. "I forgive you." Miala looked up, surprised. "But forgiveness," Mira continued, "doesn't mean access." Miala understood. She nodded slowly. She stepped back. Before she turned to leave, she said, "You deserved better. I'm sorry I wasn't that." Mira said nothing. Miala turned and walked away. The park was golden that evening, the light coming at that low, slanted angle that makes everything look warmer than it is. Mira walked beside Adrian, unhurried. "You okay?" he asked. She looked ahead at the path curving gently through the trees. She breathed out slowly. "Yeah," she said, "I finally am." Mira stood in the fading light and watched the sun sink below the horizon. There was a soft smile on her face. She had lost a husband, a sister, and the version of herself that had trusted too freely. And she had found, in the space that grief left behind, something far more durable: herself. Sometimes, the greatest karma is simply becoming happy without them.